Night Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hey, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Hope your week was all right. It's been a little hectic, and I got to warn you, we might have a situation here. I'm in Southern California, and we've been having blackouts, off and on, intermittent electrical blackouts all day, and internet even took a dive a little while ago. So we're going to hope for the best. Aside from that, my normal dog sitters, who are my kids, bailed on me. They're late getting home, so you might hear a little yipping and yapping in the background, but that should soon be remedied when one of those guys get home. So I apologize in advance if there's any interruptions due to my yapping hellhounds. But I'm really excited about tonight's program, partially because of the subject matter that we're going to be talking about, but also because I'm excited to have this guest because I've worked with her before, and she's just amazed me and others with her amazing talents and work and her teaching capabilities. So first, I want to start out to tell you just a little bit. As many of you may know, Project Stargate was one of the names for a program that was developed in the 70s to train up, so-called psychic spies, or, to sort of explore the possibilities of what sort of consciousness studies could do in terms of national security. Kind of Russia at that time was in the leading or at the forefront of parapsychological studies. And they were rumored to have been having some success with that. So part of the reason I believe that this project was developed, and I've kind of gotten confirmation from some of the people involved, was that, we were playing catch up basically with the Russians. So of course we didn't hear much about that program at all for many, many years. And it actually started, I believe, in 1978. And then in 1995, the U.S. government went public with that information and said that they were going to shut the project down and, basically declassify it. Well, number one, they didn't totally declassify it. There's a lot of stuff that I know that the public has never been made privy to. And the other thing is, I don't believe, and, many others that are much more in the know than I am, don't believe that that program has stopped. I believe it's just gone darker. And I don't know why they would cut it off, because there were some really amazing results that were able to be used by the government to inform us about what some of our adversaries were up to. So why would they cut it off? Anyhow, one of those viewers, one of the top viewers, there was only a handful really, but one of the top viewers for Project Stargate was a gentleman called Lynn Buchanan, which I've had on my show many times. Consider him a dear personal friend. And when he left the military, he started his own training program to train private citizens in the skills of remote viewing. And one of his students sort of rose to the top, to the creme de la creme, and became his star student. And that student was Lori Lambert Williams. She is now an author and an amazing remote viewing trainer in her own right. She has her own company now. It's called Intuitive Specialist, which you can hop over and look at intuitivespecialist.com if you like. And I'm going to tell you that sometime during this show, we're going to give you a code on screen, and I'll also speak it out for those who might be listening and not watching. And with that code, you can click on it, go to that site, and receive a free remote viewing masterclass. So what have you got to lose? Go for it. I mean, it's something I've kind of always been interested in and curious about. I do know that it's only partially about psychic ability, and it's a lot about training and discipline. And that's sort of where I fall short, is in the discipline area. So, but this way, I could actually take an inside look at what the training is all about and sort of demystify it for myself, as I think others can too, and see if you think it's for you. If you have an interest in it, this is a perfect way to find out about it. So we're going to be giving that code out just a little bit later. But first, I would like to introduce my guest, CEO of Intuitive Specialists at intuitivespecialist.com, and author Lori Lambert Williams. Hey, Lori.
Hey, Renee. I'm so happy to be here with you again.
Oh,
it's wonderful.
You.
I always enjoy talking to you so much. Thanks for having me on.
We have a ball, don't we? Yeah, we might mention the fact that, full disclosure, we worked together on a project fairly recently, and it was a live stream from the Lizzie Borden murder house. And you generously agreed to have your team do some sessions for us, blind sessions, I might say, and they didn't know what they were viewing, but they came up with some remarkable results, which of course we showed on air. And but we were blown away by it. I don't know if you remember, but one of our executive producers, Jay Blumke, I kept telling him, we need this remote viewing segment. And he's going like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. And I just kept harping on it. And finally he said, you know what? I'm just going to, if you feel that strongly about it, I'm just going to go with it. Although I don't really see it. At the end of the whole thing, which, lasted several days, 24/7, I might say, we were on our little wrap party call because we couldn't get together in person because of the COVID pandemic. So we had a wrap call instead of a wrap party at the end. And the first thing that Jay Blumke said was, all right, I got to say it. My very favorite part was Lori and the remote viewers. And I said, ha ha, I told you. And he just couldn't see. And it is kind of difficult to explain, isn't it?
Well, it took me a while to get to where I could do a quick elevator speech and explain what CRV is. But yeah, now I'm a little more experienced since I've been doing it for 25 years. I can explain it in a little bit more of a nutshell. But for those of your listeners who don't know what it is, to really give it in just a nutshell, CRV is really a written protocol where you're sitting at a desk with a piece of paper and a pen, and you're simply separating imagination from true psychic perceptions through a set of protocols that you're trained like a mental martial art. You're just trained and you're practiced in. And so that's basically what it is. A lot of people are like, do I go into a trance? No, you don't go into trances. Your eyes are open and you're basically just going through this set of protocols and allowing your thoughts to flow onto the paper in a pattern kind of. We have we have certain rules and certain structures to it. And it just makes it really a great way to access and control your intuition. That's the key. A lot of people have intuition. In fact, everyone has it. Some people are more intuitive than others. But the thing about it is this came from science, from the study of the interaction between the right brain and left brain, conscious and subconscious minds. So it's not just Madame Minerva in the gypsy tent, even though there's nothing wrong with Madame Minerva in the gypsy tent. This is really about true discipline so that you can learn to control it. So it's not a matter of the tail wagging the dog anymore. That's where we're going with this.
Right. Well, I'd like to kind of go back if we could, because I know that I know everyone has intuition. I really hesitate to call what I have psychic abilities, because to me, it just seems normal that, certain things, it doesn't always happen spontaneously, but sometimes it does. I'll get an idea, and then 5 minutes later it'll happen. Something will pop into my head, and those kinds of things. But I know that it does help if you do have a little bit of a developed psychic ability. It's even better, I guess, except for the fact that you might have to unlearn some things. If you've been doing it on your own, isn't it true that you kind of need to forget about it and start from scratch in a way?
Well, it's really interesting because I came into intuition, or controlling my intuition, through CRV, and later learned other types of other techniques and things. Whereas I get some students, who are CEOs of companies. I get physicians. I get a lot of professionals, but then I do have some students who earn their living as professional intuitives, psychics and mediums, and they haven't really had so much to relearn things as they've learned our mantra, which is describe, don't identify. And that I find that people who have been working professionally as psychics have a hard time with that, because a lot of times when you're a professional psychic, the goal is to name it, right? Like I remember, I remember one time it was like the psychic was like, "Oh my gosh, he killed her with a knife," or something like that. And the policeman was like, "Yeah, we already know that. What we need to know is, where can we find the murder weapon, or where can we find the body," or whatever the question was. But, the psychic will get very excited, like if they come up with a noun and they get the noun right. But the thing about most needful cases, most applications, the nouns are already known. The police already know he killed her with a knife. They need to know something else. And so descriptions are often more useful than nouns. So we're talking grammar here. People listening might be going, "Oh, grammar, yuck." But the bottom line is that when we name something, we're often wrong. If I hand you an envelope and I say, hey, Renee, what do you think is in this envelope? Could you give me some descriptions? And you say, "I don't know what it is, but it's red, smooth, and shiny. I bet it's an apple." And then I pull it out and it's a fire engine. You were great with the red, smooth, and shiny because it is red, smooth, and shiny. It's just not an apple. And so when we stick to describing things, and that's the hardest thing for most new remote viewers, is learning not to think in nouns. We're all addicted to nouns. That's what's kept us alive as a species. If we had a threat behind us and we could say, "Oh, it's a saber-toothed tiger," then, we could stay alive as a species by naming our threats. And so that's the key to all this, is learning to describe rather than identify, which is kind of a shift away from what we do as a species to protect ourselves.
Exactly. It reminds me of Joe McMoneagle's book, Mind Trek,
I love
which
that
I
book.
read many years ago. Yeah.
It's been a long time for me too. I think it's been I have it, but it's been about 25 years since I read it.
Probably the same here. And, but I do remember, well, of course, there were a couple of really amazing examples, more than a couple, in that book of tasks that he had done. But in terms of that descriptive, he did that perfectly, because I remember he was given a target and he just started saying, "I'm seeing like it's hot. It's, there's sort of these pyramidal shapes. I feel a sense of waiting, and looking, like waiting for someone to return." And, all this. Anyway, at the end of the day, unbeknownst to him, of course, because that's the way control remote viewing operates, he did not know what he was trying to see. He only knew he was viewing target F245 or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't know who was requesting the task. As it turned out, the requester was NASA, and the target was Mars 5 million years ago or something like that. And in the context of that, what he said made perfect sense. And, of course, we don't know if there were beings waiting for someone to come back. But certainly his description of the location, really drew a picture rather than to say, okay, it's Mars or it's a planet or, whatever like that. But as a child, didn't you start to sort of demonstrate some psychic abilities, and which sort of took your interest this way, maybe?
I was a very strange child. I was a very strange kid. Excuse me. I pity my poor parents, but I was the youngest of three girls. I'm going to take a quick drink and my two older sisters were very normal compared to me. But when I guess I was around 2 years old, I had a febrile seizure and I stopped breathing. And so they rushed me to the hospital and they revived me and all this. But according to my mother, I was dead. I don't know if doctors determined that I was dead, but she said my eyes were open and fixed and glassy and I wasn't breathing and I was all blue. So it sounds kind of pretty close to death, I guess. But ultimately, what happened, I think, is that did cause a shift in my brain. Joe McMoneagle, who you brought up a minute ago, has had, I think, 3 near-death experiences, where he was very, very close to death. And they have shown in studies that where they follow someone who's had a near-death experience for 20 years, that people who've had near-death experiences tend to be more psychic for whatever reason, So, but I didn't know that. I didn't even know for many years that I'd ever had a near-death experience. I just thought I was normal, but I wasn't normal in that my earliest memories, I remember angels, or what I thought were angels as a child. I remember these 3 dark beings. They had long dark hair, dark robes, and they could fly, and they would come into my room and they would take me out of my body and we would be flying to a classroom. But on the way there, we would be communicating telepathically. And of course, I was really little. I mean, I started having these experiences, I think, back when I was like 3 years old. And so that we'd be communicating telepathically. And I remember asking them if they were, like, are you God? And I could sense that they found that humorous, that I was asking that. And they would say, no, we're not God. Are you the devil? No, we're not the devil. Then I just assumed, like children tend to do, oh, if it's not God and it's not the devil, they have to be angels. Now I wonder, could they have been extraterrestrials? Could they have been, who knows, interdimensional beings? I don't know. They could have been
time
angels,
travelers. Who knows?
Something. Yeah, I don't know. But I remember I would try to communicate that to my mother, and I didn't have the language to tell her exactly what happened. But I would say, Mom, angels came. They got me out of my body, and we didn't have to talk with our mouths because we could talk with our minds. And my poor mom was freaked out. I mean, it scared her to have her little girl saying these weird things, And she just didn't know what to think about it. It just seemed very odd to her, and she was a little scared by it. But as time went on, I mean, I would see spirits, and I would have guidance that would come into my head and give me guidance, which saved my life on another number of occasions, warnings that would speak to me and things. And I also had flashes of visions that often saved my life or kept terrible things from happening, like my parents' house from burning down. And so, I just ended up having a lot of really bizarre things. I always had precognitive dreams that would come true. And sometimes if my mother was on the phone, I could hear the other person's conversation in my mind and what they were telling her. And so I did have a lot of weirdness, but I didn't know it was odd. I just thought everybody like this. I didn't have anything to compare it to. So I just assumed we were all the same and everyone was the same. I also remember hearing gorgeous music at night. When I would get in bed, I would hear this music in my head that was so beautiful. And I kept thinking, if I
Wow.
could just get it, if I could somehow get this music out of my head, everyone would just be so happy. They would love this music, and I still don't know what a lot of these things were. But then when I was 14, I met the Jesus people in a park in Knoxville, Tennessee. We had just moved there and it was summertime and I didn't know anyone. And my oldest sister felt sorry for me. So she dropped me off at the park where a band was playing and I met these Jesus people. And then I ended up doing missionary work. After I got out of high school, I went to Latin America. I was in Ecuador and Chile. But all these strange things kept happening, even though I was, now I was serving the Lord. So, and things were just as weird as ever. And when I came back, I started really looking for a way to reconcile my belief system, which was very black and white at the time, God and the devil, heaven and hell, Jesus, it was a very, very set system. And then trying to reconcile that with these many odd things that were happening that I had no explanation for. I also, when I was 12, objects started moving around me. I started experiencing a lot of psychokinesis, which is when, objects will just fly around, and move and things. And I had a lot of really bizarre psychokinesis type experiences. And in fact, in I think it was 2004, we moved into a house in Amarillo, Texas. And one morning I walked into the laundry room and this brand new big thing of laundry soap with a spigot on it lifted up in the air and spun around in front of me and landed on the floor. And just, I mean, there were always, my husband, Jim, and I laugh about it now because stuff happens all the time, even now. The other night we were watching a movie and his glasses started hopping across the dining table by themselves. And then another night we were watching a documentary and a chair that was about 6 feet away from us between the TV and us just sort of tipped over onto two legs and then gently set itself back down.
Oh
and
gosh.
I said, has this kind of stuff happened around you your whole life? And my husband's like, not till I married you. So, I don't know why objects move.
I wonder what that's attributed to. I wonder, is it some sort of electrical activity that's around people that are more sort of tuned in or something like that? I mean, we're kind of electrical beings, or
we are electrical beings. And, it's interesting because I have a vast amount of students now. I think we have over 2,000 students, but
oh my God,
when we have a 5-tier club, like that's for mentoring. And I give the students viewing assignments and it's in various levels. I say 5-tier because we have basic, intermediate, advanced, a healing group. We have different groups. And so I have meetings with these different groups to mentor them. And I always ask the students, how many of you have a problem with your watches, just burning out batteries on watches? And I mean, almost all of them do. A really high percentage have had problems with watches burning out, or lights, like street lights blinking on and off as they walk underneath them if they're out walking at night, and those kinds of things. I've messed up a lot of cash registers, and I fritz up computers. Like my IT, the guy that is my IT guy, he's like, I have never had a client who has as many electronic problems as you do. I just fritz things out. The first time I had a professional guy come to try to film my class, the batteries in his camera kept burning out. He just kept putting in new batteries and new batteries and new batteries, and the camera kept dying. And so it can, we're definitely electrical beings. And depending, I guess, on our frequencies, because now I've come to learn through remote viewing, not through science, but through my experiences in remote viewing, how we are, everything is based on frequencies. And so I guess we can emit certain frequencies and we can, and I think that must be how we fritz things up if we're,
right. Makes sense.
Intense. Yeah. It's interesting because my daughter, I have a daughter who's I guess she's going to be 39 in a few days, but when she was 14, she was a wild one. And she got really mad one day and stormed up the stairs and ran into her bedroom and slammed the door as hard as she could. A few minutes later, she came running out, freaking out. She said, Mom, the radio's turning on and off and things are flying off the shelves in my room. There's a ghost in my room. There's a ghost in my room. I said, sweetie, that's not a ghost in your room. You need to calm down and those things will stop happening. I remember one time I was really mad. I was so angry at my then husband. We had an argument and I was really mad at him. And he had his own closet. We had a master bedroom that I had a closet. He had a closet. And I sat down and I was just really mad and I was seething in this chair, but we had company. So I couldn't like express the anger. I couldn't like go and blast him or anything. So I just sat there trying to calm down, but the anger was just so strong. And all of a sudden, all the stuff in his closet just started flying around in the closet. Things started falling off shelves, but it was only in his closet. And I think it's because I was so mad at him. So it's definitely energy that causes it a lot of times, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense. It would seem like it was. So how did you end up meeting up with the remote viewing?
With Lynn?
Yeah, with Lynn.
Yeah,
Did you meet Lynn and that's how you were introduced to it?
No, actually, what happened was I was really searching. I was like, there's got to be a way to reconcile these things. I've got to understand why I am the way I am. I was reading a book by a physician who had studied children who had died and then been revived, and he had like some control groups, and he had done all this research, and he followed these kids for 20 years. And so
I know who that was. That was Martin Morse or Melvin Morse.
Melvin Morse. And so I was reading Melvin Morse's book. And there's a point at which he talks about the things that he discovered from this and how children who had near-death experiences had these certain qualities. And I recognized myself in those qualities, but I also had just found out from my mother that I had had this near-death experience. So all of a sudden, everything went click, click, click. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not normal. It's like, I'm not normal. I had this realization. And the next morning, that night I had a dream about a man who was leading. He was one of the key speakers at a conference I was attending in Denver. And the next morning I got there early and he was there early. And he was standing outside the ballroom door and we were just waiting for them to open the doors. And I just kind of looked at him. I'm a total stranger to this guy. And I'm like, I had a dream about you last night. And he's like, oh, really? What did you dream? So I start telling him this dream, and it was kind of a mundane dream. It wasn't anything exciting. It was, I just dreamt that in the dream I was telling him about this colonel that I had just met in Amarillo, Texas. So as I'm telling him the dream, he says, oh, well, what branch of the military is this colonel in? And I said, I think he's in military intelligence. He said, oh, interesting. I'm in military intelligence. And just as he said that, the cover of Dave Morehouse's book, Psychic Warrior, flashed in my mind. And I had just seen it. It was a new arrival at the bookstore, and I just kind of thumbed through it. And so as I saw this book in my mind, I just sort of blurted out, have you seen that new book about psychics in the military? And he goes, are you talking about Psychic Warrior? And I said, yes, I'm talking about Psychic Warrior. And he said, it's strange that you're asking me about that book because I was the psychologist in charge of that program for 20 years. He wasn't in charge of the program. He was the psychologist that kind of vetted the guys for their mental health.
My gosh.
And so he started talking to me just like really interested because this stranger walks up to him, says, I had a dream about you, and then asks him about a book that he's a major character in. And so he gets really interested in me and he starts asking me all these questions. And I started getting kind of nervous because I was pretty fearful. I think the CRV has helped me so much to dump a lot of the fears that I used to have. But I was kind of fearful, like, oh, wait a minute, who is this guy? Yeah. He's kind of leaning into my space and, getting a little nervous. And he could sense I was getting nervous. So, because he's like, we would have loved to have you in our program. And I'm like, men in black. And so and so then he says, hey, okay. I was literally backing away from him and trying to get away from him. So he says, look, when you get back home, look up controlled remote viewing. And so that stuck in my mind. So when I got home, and of course, this is 1996, and the internet was still relatively new around that time, compared to the way it is now. And I get on the internet, I'm trying to look up controlled remote viewing, and up comes this page that says, what is CRV? And it was Lynn Buchanan's website. And so I start reading it, and I felt this moment where this is what I've been looking for. Yeah. Because the way he explained it on his website, on that homepage, was that everybody has these abilities and we're just made that way. It's part of being human, and it's another sense like your eyesight or your hearing, and it's not any different than that. And so I just thought, oh, great. I mean, maybe I'm not a freak after all. And then I read the rest of that page. So I really I wrote him a little letter through that website, a little email, and I sent it. And he wrote back the next day, a very beautiful response, very kind. When you meet Lynn, you just feel, you can feel his warmth and his kindness. Yeah. And so he was very kind and very generous to write me back. And then it turned out that 2 weeks later, I was going to be very close to Lynn's home in Maryland. And I got stuck in Maryland.
Oh, wow. That was a while back. Yeah.
Yeah,
They
I got
moved
stuck in
out
Maryland. Yeah, they moved out in like
a long time ago.
97, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I got stuck over the weekend there. And so I called the number that he had given me, and I was really afraid because you're not supposed to call people you meet on the internet. You know, you might, terrible things might happen.
That's right.
And so I called the number, and this very grandfatherly sounding voice answers the phone and is very kind and says, "Yes, please come visit us. I'll fax you a little map on how to get to our house." And I thought, okay, if I can rent a car for $24.95 for tomorrow morning, I'll know I'm supposed to go. So I pick up the Hertz phone, and they said, "Well, we have a car for tomorrow for $24.95." So I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to go. I'm driving on the Beltway, trying to, if anybody knows what the Beltway is. Oh, I was terrified. Anyway, I finally get to Lynn's house. I get to Lynn's house, and we had this wonderful conversation that went on for 5 hours. I'm sure I overstayed my welcome, something fierce, but I still remember so many things from that conversation. And what I didn't find out till years later, Renee, this is a hilarious thing, but I found out years later when I was hearing Lynn tell the story at a dinner with a bunch of students, when they said, "How did you meet Lori?" He's telling the story, and it all is exactly the way I remembered up until I left the house. And he said, after she left the house, my wife turned to me and said, "Lynn, you've got to stop inviting these crazy people here." She said, "That poor girl and her imaginary family." And the thing was, is that I was a grandmother by the time I was 36. And so I was sitting there talking to Lynn, and I had I said, "I have 7 children and a new grandbaby." And they just, and he said, "We thought you were like 25. I was actually 39. Gosh. But he thought I was 25 years old, and he's thinking, this poor woman is nuts. She thinks she has 7 kids and a grandbaby, you know." And it was so funny because I later became really good friends with Lynn's wife, Linda. And I said, "So when did you find out that I wasn't crazy, or I wasn't lying?" And she said, "Well, we eventually met all the children and the grandbaby." So we've been friends for a very, very long time now. But anyway, so what happened was, though, that we did become really good friends. I started taking classes with Lynn. I became very good friends with his wife. I helped them with some projects that they were working on, and over time we just got very close. And he was just teaching me, and he said, "If you can come," they moved to Alamogordo, which was 6 hours away from me at the time, a 6-hour drive. And I had a crazy job running a refugee resettlement program that was 24/7. Plus, I had all these children. And he said, "If you can," because I said, "I want to teach this someday." And he said, "Well, if you can come and to every class I teach, and just sort of just absorb all this and kind of apprentice with me, then eventually I'll let you teach my class." So I just would drive 6 hours every other weekend for like 2 years. I would, thankfully everybody would pitch in to help with the kids so I could leave. And then I would drive that 6 hours there, stay for the weekend, drive 6 hours back, and just so I could learn, and I would stay in a hotel. And I just did that. And I took the same classes over and over and over and over and over again so that I could really teach it. And I don't know what it was, Renee, but there was something in me that I just knew that I was meant to help raise the consciousness of this planet. We have almost 8 billion people on the planet now. We are facing some major challenges and threats, not only to this beautiful planet we live on, but to our own species, as the survival of our species.
Of course.
And so I feel very impassioned about CRV and the potential that it has to help people.
Well, I know on your website, one of the things that I noticed, it said was, remote viewing, the ultimate survival guide. And, we think of, remote viewing, we think of spying on people. We think of, spying on our enemies, that sort of thing, military stuff. But what would be the applications of remote viewing that could help someone in their everyday world, that, day-to-day life? How do you use it in your day-to-day life? Yeah.
Oh, gosh. The great thing about CRV is it is a mental martial art. And so if you think about any martial art, If you say the word martial art, it's kind of a basket. You don't know if I'm talking about taekwondo or jujitsu or karate. Well, it's the same thing with CRV. There's many different types of remote viewing. I have a mailing list now of like 30,000 people, and I put a letter out letting them know that I would be on the show tonight if they wanted to join in, and invited them to write and ask questions. That was maybe a mistake, but I got a lot of questions, and one of the questions was about, how do you use this to help yourself? And that is a big focus that we have now in the classes, is teaching people practical ways. And one of the things that CRV is really great for is that once you learn it, just like a martial art, if the idea behind learning, wax on, wax off, and doing these automated things that you just keep doing over and over so that they become automatic, is so that if you are attacked, you respond without even thinking. Your subconscious mind takes over your body, just like your subconscious mind takes over your body and drives you home when you're thinking about what should I cook for dinner tonight. And
Right,
you realize
right.
you've driven a few blocks without even thinking about it. That's what we want. We teach you this kind of structure for you to write all these things down as they're coming in, and where to write them on the page. Your conscious mind is busy thinking, okay, where should I put this on the page according to the instructions I've been given, while the subconscious mind is busy giving information. So both minds are busy and working together. And the idea behind it is that eventually it becomes so automated that during your day, you're constantly like reaching out and getting information. And so I find myself all throughout the day reaching out and getting information that I need. And it's become so normal to me that I almost don't realize I'm doing it a lot of times. And then Jim will ask me something. My husband's name is Jim. Jim will ask me something, and I'll just answer him, and he'll say, "Oh, how did you know that?" And I'll just be like, "Oh, because I just got that information." And it becomes an automatic thing that you can do. So I really work a lot with my students so that they learn all the rote parts, the structural parts of CRV, so that eventually, over years, they won't need those structural parts. It'll be automatic when they're out and about doing things. However, whenever I'm doing, for example, an operational remote viewing or a paid project, I always follow the structure very, very thoroughly, because the structure is like a safety net that really helps you and helps to set aside the emotions that can keep you from being able to remote view objectively, for example.
Now, I'm trying to think, I'm trying to grasp, on a daily level, on a very practical level, what kinds of things. But I mean, does it just affect everything? Does it come into play when you meet someone?
I think so,
possibly
definitely.
For business or something like that.
Yes, I mean there are now many business applications. There are medical applications, healing applications. We used, I think you and I might have talked about this before, but we had a guy who had been looking for 40 years in a 200 square mile area of ocean for artifacts. He was an archaeologist. He was looking for artifacts that he believed to be at the bottom of this area of ocean. But he'd been searching for them for 40 years with boats and divers and lots of expense. And we mounted a project with 14 viewers and 4 project managers and full monitors. And we were able to put together a very professional report for this man with maps and GPS coordinates and all kinds of things. And he was able to go out with the boats and the divers and the machinery and actually find these artifacts that he had spent 40 years looking for. We were able to give him the exact location and tell him. He believed, yes, there's only, we're still actually, this project isn't complete yet. But what he found was he found walls with inscriptions on them, pillars, archways, because his belief is that there was a civilization in this area at one time. Wow. And I can't share where it is right now, because I agreed not to. But the area that we were working in has been covered with water for 18,000 years. So if there was a civilization there and a city there, that civilization had to be more than 18,000 years old. So it's pretty exciting.
And does he have any indication what kind of civilization it was? I mean, are we talking Atlantis here?
No, I don't know. No, we're pretty sure it's not Atlantis. we think it was just like an ancient
Wow.
civilization from that era.
How
But
exciting.
interesting. Yeah, I mean,
And you
if
guys
Atlantis,
found it.
yeah,
Oh,
we were able to remote view. I mean, this was a team effort. I was not a viewer on this project. I was one of the project managers. So I wasn't a viewer on it, but the viewers did such an amazing, amazing job on this project. And you saw with the Lizzie Borden thing, I mean, how
well,
amazing the
yeah.
information was.
I was just getting ready to
Uh,
say, it was really impressive because of the consistency, within the context of what we were actually asking, which of course they didn't know what we were asking. They just knew they were viewing something.
they were told the target is an event. Describe the target.
Right. Oh,
That's the
gosh.
information they were given.
But and they came up with some amazing things, and they did, basically describe the crime. But what was interesting was that they were consistent almost to a person with what they described.
Yes.
And,
I
of
think
course, they were nowhere near each other. They were all from their own locations.
They were all scattered. Yeah. And I'm trying to remember, but I don't think anyone knew who else was doing the project or who else was a viewer on the project. So they were kept separate. They were spread out over, it was all done remotely. Everyone turned their stuff into me via email, so no one knew anything. And their stuff was amazingly consistent.
Wow.
It was quite amazing.
Yeah, I think Lizzie might have just had something to do with it. All right. Lizzie, but not by herself. I think she had some help. No. I think that's what we found.
She definitely, that's what we did find. And you asked about applications. On my website, what it says is that controlled remote viewing is the survival skill of the future. And the thing is, though, the future's now. I mean, if you could control those flashes of intuition, if you were able to do it on demand, to get information on demand, think about how that might change your life. How would that change your career? How could that change your relationships? How could that change your finances? How could that change, or improve your life? For me, of course, I teach CRV, but I used to actually travel quite a bit to teach CRV. And one year, and I'd been telling Jim for a couple of years how I really would love to go up the East Coast and see the fall colors and drive in our motorhome. We had this old, it was a Diplomat, a Monaco Diplomat motorhome. It was like a bus, like 39 feet long. And so and I said, one of these years, we've got to go up the East Coast. So one day I was walking out of our house to go to my office, which was only a mile away. And I stopped. It was a January morning, and I looked at Jim and I said, this is the year. In October this year, we're going to go up the East Coast, and we're going to go visit Greg, my friend Greg in Massachusetts, and we're going to see these beautiful fall colors in the motorhome. And he said, well, how are we going to do that? And I said, we're going to get a class. And I walk in my office, like 5 minutes later, and the phone was ringing, and I picked it up, and this woman said, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I have a spiritual center in Massachusetts, and I was wondering if you would mind coming and teaching your classes here in October, this year. So I called Jim like 10 minutes later. I'm like, okay, we have the class in October, and it turned out to be 20 minutes away from Greg's house. So that year we went up the coast, but before we left, and I ended up having like 5 or 6 classes throughout the U.S. So we took a 4-month trip. And we were teaching. But before we left, I just did a remote viewing to see what each class was going to be like and, what I might need to prepare for with each class. Because every class, of course, you have different personalities and there's different dynamics so that I would know what to prepare for, and, for each class. And everything was perfectly accurate. So this is just one example. But if you could be going into a meeting and know what to anticipate before the meeting, if you're going into a business meeting, or if you need to do strategic planning and you need to know what next year, imagine in 2019, if you could know what 2020 was going to be like. For me, it totally saved my business, because in 2015, I said, oh, something's coming. I need to switch from teaching all in-person classes to start teaching online live classes.
Wow.
And so, a lot of like, people, gurus and I'm not a guru, but a lot of like Jeff Walker, who's called the granddaddy of internet marketing, for example. Every year he has huge called a product launch formula live, and he would have 1,000 people come to this conference in hotels in Phoenix or Orlando or whatever, and a lot of guys in that genre will have annual big conferences. All of a sudden, when 2020 hit and the pandemic shut everything down, they were caught by surprise. They weren't expecting it. And so they had to cancel these massive things. It was huge expense. And then they had to figure out, what do we do? What do we do? Whereas I was already prepared. I was already teaching online because I knew by 2015 that I needed to do that.
Wow.
I didn't know exactly why, but I could sense something's coming. I need to start doing it now, because it took me a couple of years to kind of get the hang of it and to kind of, get where I could pull everything up easily. And I'm not a tech person, Ask me to remote view the dawn of time, Renee, but don't ask me to handle tech. Okay? So it took me a while to get to where I was comfortable with the tech and everything, So if I had gotten hit by surprise in 2020, when I was all my stuff was planned to be live, I would have, really, as they say, get caught with your pants down. I would have been like, oh no, how do I handle this? But I had a lot of lead time to get ready. So that's another reason why I created this free introduction to remote viewing. It's an introduction masterclass. And I hate when people offer free stuff and then you watch it and it's just a big sales pitch. And I'm not a salesperson. So that's not what this is. This is the introduction to practical remote viewing. And we do call it a masterclass because it's a 4-day thing. It's over 4 days. It's not 4 full days. I think it's an hour each day for 4 days, plus another hour after each hour of like a Q&A afterwards. And so it's like 2 hours a day. That's like an 8-hour class, and it's completely free. But my whole motive in it was to reach out to people, to let them know this exists and to give them a chance to experience it, to try it. And that, so that at least they would kind of know, either like, oh man, this sucks, or they'll be like, wow, this really resonates with me. This is something I feel like I'm supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
And so that was my whole purpose in it. So I really had to cram a lot of teaching into a very short space of time. The full classes are not nearly as fast. But I watched some of that and I go, wow, I was talking fast. So
wow.
if you're, but I have a lot of people who've taken that free class and they're like, they love it. And even if English isn't their first language, they still really, really enjoy it.
Oh, that's great. So, oh my goodness, we're already almost halfway through. I got distracted because someone called Lynn Buchanan just joined the chat room, and I was trying to figure out, is that really Lynn? So show yourself if that's you, Lynn Buchanan. Say something that only Lori and I would know. That's going to be tough because he oh, goodness. But anyhow, if it's not really Lynn, then it's someone paying him the ultimate tribute, because imitation is the highest form of flattery, they say.
It really is. It really is. I did, Renee, I did get a lot of questions beforehand that people were asking. And a lot of people asked how they can tell the difference between intuition and imagination. These are people who've never taken a remote viewing class and just want to know, like, how do I know when something's just my imagination or when it's true intuition? And if I were just to answer that without teaching a class, and if they didn't feel like they could take a class or anything, it's a difficult one. And that's one thing that CRV actually solves, is it does help you to separate things. But the way that it has you separate things is through setting aside the naming words and sticking with just the descriptors. So if you think something and you want to know, is this just my imagination? If you can separate out the naming things and just see if you can come up with a list of descriptors when you have a question. But there's a lot of things tied into it, because sometimes the question we think we need the answer to is not really the question. Sometimes it goes really much
the answer
deeper.
You need.
Exactly. Like some people will say, should I quit my job? And that seems like a pretty, easy answer, like yes or no, right? But no, what's the reason? Why are you thinking of quitting your job? And what do you really want? Are you looking for more money? Are you looking for greater satisfaction, greater fulfillment? You want to be happier? What are the reasons behind your even asking this question? Because we have to dig a little deeper if we want the correct answer. Does that make sense? And in my blog, I have a blog on my website. I wrote a blog about finding your ideal location. And when you're really, a lot of people right now, because of the uncertainty in the world, a lot of people are really looking for, where should I live? What is the right place? And when they're looking for where they should live, then this blog, actually, it's a free class. You don't even have to give me your email address. It's right there in the blogs, and it teaches you ways that you can use to try to find your ideal location. So,
what about your ideal man? Or
some people are asking. Yeah, some people are asking.
Do people ask that? Okay,
people do. People ask about, how could I find my true love, and things like that. And one thing that is a great exercise that anyone could do with a piece of paper and a pen is you could just sit down and on the right side of the page, write down any naming words, and on the left side of the page, write down any descriptive words. So you say, okay, what do I want in my ideal man? Just since you brought that up, what do I want in my ideal man? And so you could write down like green eyes, black hair, for example. Those would be descriptive. Then you might think of a name, like you might say, I want maybe a famous movie star's name or something, and you set that aside because you're not going to probably end up with that movie star, right? But then you go back and you think of the qualities that you're looking for and that sort of thing. So you kind of go back and forth, putting down the things you're looking for and setting aside the naming words. I don't know that would bring that person into your life, but it would definitely clarify for you the things that are important in that, so that are important to you, so that when you do find the right person, you recognize that person, because that person meets all the things that just kind of flowed out of you when you were just doing this exercise of writing down these different words.
So is it kind of like when I asked you that question privately on the phone the other day, and you said, Renee, I'm a remote viewer, not a magician?
That probably wasn't very nice of me to say that.
Well, I got a good laugh out of it anyway. I'm always for the laugh. I'm always for the joke. I love that. No, it was funny because I wasn't really being serious, but we were having one of those moments where your text took on a life of its own, and it typed out a name. Remember?
And that's right. Yes,
it was Cowan,
right.
And you said, and I had said I'd made a joke about husband or something. And you said, and I said, oh, maybe that's my husband, and so I started joking about Cowan.
Yeah,
but anyway,
those dictation things they do have a mind of their own. The dictation features on the iPhone. You're talking, and then it suddenly puts a really random word in there that you didn't even say, and it's nothing that even sounded like anything you said. And that's what happened when you and I were texting, and all of a sudden it just put this word Cowan, Cowan. So Cowan, if you're out there, Renee is ready for you.
I'm seeing him coming into view. It's funny because some of those, I've done that before and sent the text before I noticed, and sometimes it's been dirty words. So I have to be very careful with my text. Now, we're getting ready to take a break in just a moment, but before we go, I wanted to put up the link to the actual free class, and it's showing on the screen. But if I don't start coughing, I can read it out.
Here, yes.
intuitivespecialist.com/masterclass-ref/28/. intuitivespecialist.com/masterclass-series/ref/28/. So there we go. Anyway, and I will put that up again. I'll leave it up here till we go on the break, and I'll put it up again before the end of the show. so that everyone can take advantage of it. But yeah,
that would be great.
I think it's great to think about, the types of ways that remote viewing could be used. I just don't think I'd really considered it in that way before. So it's fun to kind of think, oh yeah, that would be very helpful. I mean, you don't necessarily have to be. I was going to say, you don't necessarily have to be looking for a buried treasure or something like that. It can be very practical reasons that you're.
Very practical. We've used this before. Also, he's suggesting, a little note just came up suggesting you take the thing off now so it doesn't block the video. I think when the commercial comes on, maybe.
Right. Absolutely.
But anyway,
Mr. Producer.
I wanted to say that one practical way. We had a student years ago when I was a student, and he was trying to choose between 3 job offers he had gotten. And so a bunch of us, and we were new viewers, we hadn't been viewing very long, but a bunch of us did a remote viewing session for him to find out which job was the one. He didn't tell us anything about the jobs. In fact, most of the viewers were completely blind to the target, and all of them described an Asian man. And only one of the 3 job offers was from Tokyo. And so he took that job, and it turned out to be like his dream job, and his boss was a Japanese man.
Oh, wow. We're going to have to take a quick break. Can we finish this story on the other side? That's great. Thank you so much. We'll be right back in just about 3 minutes with more of Lori Lambert and Controlled Remote Viewing.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Welcome back to Night Vision. I'm your host, Renee Barnett. My guest tonight is author and controlled remote viewing expert and teacher, Lori Lambert Williams. And I'm so sorry I had to cut you off before the end of your story. I mean, I ruined the whole climax of it, But
no, it's totally fine.
But he took the job, and it did turn out to be a good situation, the correct decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
yes.
great.
It did turn out to be the best decision, and he was thrilled to be able to get that kind of answer. And in another case, we had a man who was seeking for answers about a relationship that he was having, And it was with a foreign person, and he just wasn't sure about that. What was the truth behind this relationship? A completely blind remote viewer did a session for him, gave him a ton of information about this partner of his, and it helped him so much. It revealed so many things, and it all turned out to be accurate. So it really helped him take the proper steps to avoid being taken advantage of and that sort of thing. There's just so many practical, you were asking about practical ways that this can be used. So I have several students who are real estate, they work in real estate. And so they can use their CRV skills to sell more houses, actually, because if you wanted to buy a house and you called me and said, could you take me to look at some houses tomorrow? I want to buy a house. I could do a remote viewing session to see, the house that you're going to buy. So I could actually see the house you're going to buy.
So
and
they
that
could
way
recognize
I show
it.
you houses.
So
exactly. So
you
I
could
could
tell me, okay, it's going to look like it's going to be brick, and it's going to have a fireplace, and it's going to have.
I wouldn't tell you anything. No. I wouldn't tell you anything. I would simply take you to houses that fit the descriptions I got. I wouldn't say anything to you about it. I would just take you there. And then you walk into this house the first house I bring you to, and you're like, oh my God, this is it. This is the house I've been dreaming of.
Wow.
This is it. So instead of having to show you 20 houses and take, 3 weeks for you to find the house, maybe you'll buy the first or second house I show you, because I've already gotten information beforehand, and I take you to houses that fit those descriptions. Does that make sense?
Oh, wow.
And in other situations, there are so many practical ways that this can be used. My husband and I, in one of our houses, we had a leak that happened, or something. I can't remember. Anyway, there was water damage, so we had to have our whole bedroom remodeled. And so once it was ready to be painted, we were like, "What color should we paint it?" And we didn't have an idea. So we decided that we would both go into separate rooms and do a quick remote viewing session and remote view the color that our bedroom would be 2 weeks from now. So, the target is the color that our bedroom is going to be 2 weeks from now. And then without telling each other anything, we would drive down to the paint store and just pick up the paint chip that, I would pick up the paint chip I saw, he would pick up the paint chip he saw. So we walk in and we both reach for the same paint chip. And we'd both seen the exact same color. And it was this beautiful peach color that we would have never thought of painting our room peach. But it was this beautiful light peach color. And then we did white trim, and it looked like a beach house. It was so pretty. It came out so perfect. And we were like, we could have never come up with this on our own, because we don't have a lot of, interior design skills. So it was just really fun to use CRV that way. For quick answers, practical things. And you're only limited by your lack of imagination if you can't think of practical ways to use it on a daily basis.
Right.
So
does it come into play in sensing danger?
Yes. And we use a system of little symbols that we call ideograms that look very much like shorthand. If any of your listeners are old enough to remember what shorthand is, if you watch any movies from the 1950s where there's a secretary and a boss, the secretary is holding her little pad and the boss is dictating a letter, and the secretary is writing, just really as fast as he's talking, because she's using a series of symbols called shorthand that allowed her to be able to write as fast as the guy's dictating. And so the key to that is that if you were to create some symbols for some basic ideas of things that we refer to in CRV as gestalts. So basic ideas like land, water, man-made, anything that involves land. There's a lot of types of land. There's a lot of types of water. Water comes in many forms: steam, ice, snow, vapor, and liquid water like oceans and rivers and puddles and raindrops, the wine in someone's glass or the sweat on someone's brow. So we're not necessarily talking about a thing. We're talking kind of about an overall concept or an overall idea. And so we start out with these symbols and we practice them until they become second nature. And all of this is free on my website. This is all free on intuitivespecialist.com. There's a little tab that says free stuff. And under that free stuff, there's a lot of free goodies there, including some free classes. And so in addition to that 4-part free introduction to remote viewing masterclass, there's also a lot of extras, free extra things, including a program that you can use to practice your symbols, practice your ideograms. And the great thing about that, because you were talking about sensing danger, if you were to create an ideogram, let's say you were a policeman and you created an ideogram for danger or weapon or armed, something like that. Then let's say you got a domestic violence call and you were by yourself in your police cruiser and you're heading to this domestic violence problem and you do a quick ideogram. If you get your ideogram for safety or safe, then you go, okay, well, I don't need backup. But if you get your ideogram for danger or armed or weapon, you think, well, I better call for backup. And it sounds kind of abstract when I'm explaining it so quickly, in a 2-minute spot on the show. But if you go onto the website, you can get a lot more in-depth explanation of how this works. But the system of ideograms can actually be used to give yourself a lot of information. To sense you can even use your body. The key to all of CRV, Renee, is that the body is a link between conscious and subconscious minds. So because the body is the link between your conscious and your subconscious mind, think about it. How often has your body given you a signal about something where your stomach tightens or you get kind of freaked out because you kind of sense something's not right? And it's your body that's reacting. It's not even your brain that's telling you something's not right. It's your body, right? So when that happens, and your body's reacting, what we teach you to do with CRV is to really tune into your body and to use this written system of symbols to kind of create a foundation for whatever you're going to be remote viewing. It creates a really great foundation, kind of let you know, well, for example, if I wanted to ask you to view the location of a missing child, and I wouldn't do that with a new viewer at all, ever. But let's say you were a professional remote viewer and I needed you to describe the location of a missing child, and you were able to start out just to get yourself rolling, just start out with some symbols, and you go, oh, well, there's land and water there together with something man-made alongside that. That could create the foundation, and then you could move to that land and get descriptors about it, move to the water and get descriptors about it, move to that man-made thing and get descriptors about it. And you kind of are building on your foundation as you get deeper into the remote viewing experience, until you finally have a moment, a kind of an aha moment that we call the aesthetic impact, when you stop just getting words that are random and you start almost like interacting with it, like, wow, it's taller than me. Well, you're not there, so how can it be taller than you? Well, you're perceiving it in a more profound way now. It's like, oh, it's taller than me, or it's next to me, or whoa, this place kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies. You start kind of getting deeper and more profound information, and it just gets deeper and deeper from there. The more experienced you get as well.
Now, these symbols, idioms that you're talking about, are they universal? Ideograms, are they?
No, they are individual to each viewer.
So I make my own symbols,
exactly,
depending on how I perceive things.
Well, no, you can consciously choose some very simple symbols when you first start out. And then what's really cool is that eventually your subconscious mind starts giving you symbols. So it becomes almost like a two-way street, like a conversation. You get symbols back from your subconscious. And of course, this sounds probably to the listeners who don't have the chance to hear the whole in-depth class, this might sound like, whoa, this is a little over my head. But again, they can find out all about this on the website, because all of this is free on the website. But it's just you can choose your own symbols. And then, they are conscious when you first choose them. But for just a moment, think about the alphabet. If you speak English, we're speaking English here, so I'll go with English alphabet. Think about the letter C. If you think about the letter C, it's a shape, right? But it also has a sound. It also has a sound, right? So if you say this shape with the sound K, if you add this shape with the sound ah, and then you add this shape with the sound ta, then you've got the word cat.
Right.
Right. So as children, we learn phonetics. We learn this shape sounds like this, and this shape sounds like that, and this shape sounds like that. And then eventually we learn to put those things together, which form words. And then we end up understanding being able to read and being able to read out loud and have language with each other and things like that. To me, the fascination of this whole idea of ideograms is just that it becomes so deep and so amazing, and you can use it in so many different ways. In the remote viewing community, there's a lot of controversy about ideograms because different teachers teach it differently. And the original way that Ingo Swann, who's considered to be the father of remote viewing, there's a lot of controversy about what Ingo taught. And I heard a remote viewer say something the other day that I thought was brilliant. He said, there's a reason we are still not flying the plane they flew at Kitty Hawk. There's a reason that the U.S. Army is not flying Kitty Hawk type planes. They're flying F-18s. They're flying stealth. Why is that? Are they supposed to just adhere no, we should follow Wilbur Wright. We should still be, no, things evolve. They grow as we learn. And the depth, the viewers that have graduated from my school as professional viewers are now working for remote viewing companies and are considered to be some of the best viewers that some of these project managers in these companies have. They provide very professional reports. They do very in-depth viewing. And yet we still hear from some people in the community that, no, should be doing it a certain way, and there's no room for growth or change at all. And of course, we're trying to very much adhere to the military way of doing it. But the only place there's a piece of controversy is in the teaching of ideograms, because we do teach that eventually, once you've really learned them, just like you learn to drive yourself home when you're thinking about something else and you're on autopilot, just in that very same way, ideograms can come to you at random times during the day, or when you're in a session where ideograms will pop out. And those ideograms contain information about the target that can be very profound. And the ideograms that pop up to you during the day, just like, have you ever had a song come to you in the day?
Oh, yeah.
That just pops in your head and you're like, well, I haven't heard that song in years. Why am I thinking about that song? One time I was really mad about something. I think it was a credit card thing, and I was going to write this credit card company. I was really mad at it, whatever happened. And all of a sudden I realized that in my head, I'm hearing Let It Be by the Beatles over and over. Just that part of the song, let it be, let it be, let it be. And I just thought, okay, that's my subconscious mind telling me to just drop this and let it go. And so, sometimes, just as we can get messages through songs playing in our heads, or these or you open a book and a sentence jumps out at you that's the exact thing you need for that day. In the same way, ideograms can come to you and have messages that really help, and that can give you information. So anyway, I just love talking about this.
It's amazing. And Ingo Swann was absolutely, unquestionably a genius. I was able to interview him a couple times and have some interactions with him when I used to work in print journalism. So he was quite an amazing person all the way around. But certainly, things do evolve. And
he evolved as well. I mean, Ingo evolved long after he was no longer working for the military. He continued to develop things. And the reason I know that, and people will say, how do you know that? You don't know that. I do know that because Ingo and Lynn became such good friends. And I was at Lynn's house so much when Ingo would call in. And sometimes Lynn would ask Ingo if it would be okay to put him on speaker. And he would put him on speaker. And I would hear their conversations. And Ingo adored Lynn Buchanan. And so, and they had a very close relationship. So I was a witness to that. That's not just Lynn telling me that. That's something I witnessed with my own eyes and ears. So, so that when people tell me, it's this or it's that, and they can get amazingly funny about it. But but all I know is that if it works, there's a verse in the Bible that says, "Wherefore by their fruits you shall know them." Right.
Right.
So what is the fruit the ultimate fruit of whatever it is you're trying to do to improve your life. This is really about the listeners, those who are watching this program right now. How do they want to change their lives? Do they need to change their lives? Maybe, if they're perfectly content, I say, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if there's something that you'd like to know more of, or you'd like to grow in a certain way, or you would like to challenge yourself and see what you're capable of, and you feel like this is a great way to do it, I find the best remote viewers are the ones who have a really good balance of right and left brain abilities. Like maybe they're super ultra naturally psychic, but they also run their own business and have to do taxes and things.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you both left and right brain, skills. And so I feel that the people who do the best have a really good balance, because if you're way too far one way or way too far the other way, it can be a little more difficult. People who are very, very naturally psychic, but and when I first started with Lynn, I was very, very right-brained. And right-brained people are the ones who can't be on time sometimes, and I'm guilty of that, or who can't remember where they put their pencil 2 minutes ago, and who are struggling to remember nouns all the time. That's me. And I'm shocked that Lynn ever thought I could learn this, because I struggled with the structure, just trying to remember where I was supposed to put things, because my brain wasn't very structured. So CRV really helped to help me to get more structured and to become a little more analytical, actually. And one of the questions I got via email was about that, like, what do remote viewers find? How has CRV helped them in their lives? And I actually put out a little quiz or a little survey years ago asking, how has CRV, what's the greatest thing you've gotten from becoming a remote viewer? And the one that I heard the most common really surprised me, because the comment that I heard the most common was confidence, greater confidence.
Wow.
And that wasn't what I expected to hear,
Yeah.
but they were like, it really has increased my confidence. And I mentioned to you that it really helped me drop a lot of fears that I had. And I had a terrible fear of heights, that remote viewing height targets on a regular basis completely desensitized me to the point where I have done bungee jumping. I have gone parasailing.
Oh
I've
my
gone
gosh.
on amazing roller coasters and things. I mean, things I could never have done before. So it really broadened my experience because it took away that phobia. And so there are so many benefits to it. You can anticipate things before they happen and head them off at the pass, so to speak.
Right.
You can increase your confidence. It's a wonderful tool for self-discovery. I didn't realize what a terrible fear of heights I had until I was reacting to height targets in a certain way that Lynn was like, you have a fear of heights? Actually, yes, I do.
I have a horrible one. It's like I remember not that long ago it was for work, and I had to be in this big hotel that was like, had this open atrium from the bottom floor clear to the top. So I was up on one of the upper floors, and they were saying, come and look, look down into the lobby. And I couldn't do it. Finally, the only way I could do it is if I got down and crawled over there and just looked really over.
And now
over
they have
edge.
all these things, they have a thing. I think is it in New York City or Chicago, where at the top of a skyscraper, they have a clear slide that's transparent that you can slide out the window, out over the street, and spiral down to the next floor below.
No.
And my kids went there, and they took their children, my kids and my grandkids, and they slid down that slide. I just thought, oh my God,
there's no way.
Terrifying.
Not in a million years.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Well, yeah, maybe I could use remote viewing for that, get rid of some of that. I just, I don't think about it much because I've just lived my life avoiding those situations.
That's exactly
as a
what
kid, I used to climb up on things and then look down and get scared and I'd have to be, rescued.
That's what happened. I hadn't really realized that I was so afraid of heights. And then Lynn started noticing that anytime a target involved heights, that I had a certain reaction. And so then when he said, do you have a fear of heights? I suddenly remembered all these times when I had really, like I climbed a tree, but, there was a friend of mine had a tree house, and the tree house was 40 feet up. Wow. And I climbed the ladder with no problem. I get up there and I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And then I look down and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I thought, how am I ever going to get down? And I don't remember how they got me down, but I just remember being almost like ready to faint. And then I remember in the 8th grade, we went to the top of the World Trade Center. And I kept having this sense that the buildings were waving, that they were going
they
like
were.
this. and that I was going to fall.
They do wave. Those tall buildings do wave.
Yeah. And I just remember I couldn't look down. I couldn't look over the edge, up on when you would go up to that area where you could look down. Oh my God, I just couldn't do it, So
were you in the Windows on the World restaurant at the top?
I don't remember now. I just remember that I had a very panicky moment. I was in the 8th grade. I was at the top of the World Trade Center and I had to get out of the building. I had to get out of there. I just couldn't handle it at all.
But you don't have that anymore, huh?
No, I don't. Like I said, we went to Six Flags Over Texas, and with all of our kids, and they hide there where you lay down, like face down. You're completely stretched out on what's kind of like a rug, and then they wrap you up like a burrito, and you're kind of wrapped in these ropes, and then they pull you up on one of those really tall cranes that build the skyscrapers. It was this huge crane, and they pull you to the top of the crane. So you're at the level of a skyscraper, and then they drop you, and you're attached to a bungee. And they totally drop you, and you're free falling with this bungee. And then the bungee gets to its stretching point, and it gets all stretched down, and then it pulls you, goes boing, and it goes back up. So it's going boing, boing. And my kids waited in line with us for like 2 hours just to see if I would do it. They could not believe I was going to really do it. And I did it, and I wasn't scared at all. And it was so fun.
My gosh.
And it was really a blast. And I've done a lot of rides like that, really high rides at amusement parks with my kids or with my husband, who's never been afraid of heights. And so he and I do all these fun things together. But imagine if I hadn't gotten over the fear of heights through CRV, then he would be wanting to do these things. And I'd be like, no, I can't. I'm too afraid. That limits your life when you have all these fears. And I used to have so many fears. So for the person who was asking, how has this changed your life? I can speak for myself that it has helped eliminate a lot of fear for me.
Wow.
I've just discovered that so many things I was fearful of before, because we fear that which we do not understand.
Yeah.
And so when scary stuff is happening, if you've got forks flying across the room and laundry bottles turning upside down and things, you can be scared of those things if you don't understand what's happening. But when you kind of understand that we live in a pretty interesting universe that may be a virtual reality, maybe we're living in a virtual reality. And I listened to the most fascinating thing the other night. I was listening to the Calms app. Have you ever heard the Calm app? It's a wonderful app. It's a wonderful app if you have anxiety.
I've seen it advertised on television. It says, relax for 15 seconds or something, and then it gives you like this raindrops and
I didn't even know.
Things you can pull up. Yeah.
I never watched television, but anyway, it's this app called Calm. My daughter recommended it because sometimes my brain is so active, I don't sleep. And you put it on and it does all kinds of things. It teaches you to meditate and blah, blah, blah. But for me, the only thing I really use it for is sleeping. And it has sleep stories. And I put on this sleep story about the theory of relativity. And he talks about how initially when they were trying to understand all this, and when Einstein and other physicists were trying to understand how the world works, they talked about how, for example, if you examine miles per hour is distance times time, right? We got miles, distance, times time, which is hour. And they found out that light doesn't obey the rules that normal distance related to time does. And then they found out that time moves slower the faster you go, when they developed atomic clocks and they put a clock on a plane that went around the world however many times and came back, and it had slowed down compared to the clock that had been synchronized with it that stayed on the ground. And so, that's like in the movie Interstellar when he comes back and his daughter is like 80 years old. Anyway, the thing about it though is they were figuring out time and distance and time and how they relate, and then they figured out, we have to add mass and gravity, because those affect everything too. That the mass of the planet actually causes a bend in the universe, and that's why planets rotate and orbit around, or moons orbit around planets, and planets orbit around the sun. And so as I was listening to this, I thought the piece that's missing is consciousness, because they figured out time and distance and mass, that mass is energy, and gravity and how gravity affects everything. But consciousness is probably the glue that holds it all together. And that's how they found out that light changes as we observe it, that the act of observing something actually changes it.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Have you ever heard of the Valium experiment?
The Valium experiment?
Valium experiment. You know what Valium is? Valium in the 50s was a drug. I mean, people still take Valium today.
Yeah.
But in the 1950s, Valium was called mommy's little friend, because
yes.
women who were at home taking care of their kids were having nervous breakdowns, so they would give them Valium, and they would be nice and relaxed, because Valium is really known to relax people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really interesting, because I have several friends who are physicians, and they don't know each other, but they all called me when this experiment was done, and like, oh my God, we have to tell you about this experiment. So what they did was they had these volunteers who were hooked up to computers that, they had IVs in their arms that were hooked up to the computers, and the computers would randomly administer Valium to them. But no one knew when it was going to be administered, or when it was, you couldn't tell when it was being administered. I think there was like saline going in the rest of the time. So they never knew when anyone was getting the Valium. The doctors didn't know. The researchers didn't know. The volunteers didn't know. No one knew. And the Valium had no effect on anyone. It just didn't have an effect. Without anyone being conscious of the Valium being administered, it had no effect.
Wow.
So consciousness is the key. And it's so funny, because it really does. It makes amazing sense.
I can remember, having surgery or having a baby or something like that, and being in pain and watching that clock, was like, is it time yet for me to get my, and as soon as I would call for my medication and I knew it was coming, I would immediately start feeling better, even before they came in and administered it. So it was like my mind was already saying, okay, help is on the way. You're going to feel better. Oh, you do feel better. It was very strange.
Yes. It's like the placebo effect, where if someone thinks they're getting a certain drug, not only do they feel better, but in certain cases, the placebo actually, the body actually creates the drug without the drug being administered.
Oh.
The body creates it. And so that amazed me. Another thing that amazed me is I have several students who are psychologists and psychiatrists, and we've had discussions about multiple personality disorder,
Mm-hmm.
which they now have a different name for, but it used to be called multiple personality disorder. And the crazy thing, one of my students was just telling me about this the other day, and he owns 2 psychology clinics. He said, not only can you have like multiple personalities where one personality has blue eyes and one personality has brown eyes. Mm-hmm. So when you switch from one personality to the other, your eyes change color. But he said even skin tone has changed color.
Oh,
and one personality might have diabetes and the other one might have high blood pressure, or not have anything. One personality has an allergy to strawberries, and the other one can eat strawberries no problem. And it's all in the same body.
Yeah.
The personalities are all in the same body. So what does that tell you about reality?
That is pretty amazing.
What is reality when you think about these things? And I know the listeners in your show, you guys talk about some wild, really interesting things. And so that's why I'm bringing this up, because I feel that CRV is a doorway to examine, not to push your boundaries with reality, not to make it crazy. I always tell my students, hey, whatever you do, stay sane. I want to make a t-shirt that says sane, the new sexy.
Yeah, exactly. I'll buy one.
Yeah, you have to make sure you stay very grounded as you think about these things, because we do share one reality. The problem is that we don't always perceive reality the same way, so reality can be viewed in different ways. I mean, if I have 2 viewers and one of them was raped by a priest, for example, if one of them was raped by a priest and the other one was a devout Catholic, and I were to give them a Catholic mass to remote view, the results from those 2 viewers would be very different,
right,
based on the lens that they're seeing it through, and the lens of their opinions and their trauma or whatever, So we might have the same reality, but we don't always share a consensual reality in the way that we see the world and based on our opinions and our belief systems.
Yeah.
Your belief system, I was so fascinated by the way the subconscious mind worked in CRV, especially with time travel and how you could move backwards in time and do something that a historic moment, not even knowing what you were remote viewing, but remote view it accurately. And I have a student who writes historic novels, historic fiction, and that's why she took remote viewing, so that she could visit some of the things she wanted to write about,
Oh my
and write about
gosh.
them more, with more, whatever you're thinking, more meat to her stories.
Yeah.
And she loves it, and it works great. But anyway, so there's so many things about CRV that I love, and time travel is one of them. But when it all comes down to reality, when I started this, I didn't believe in ETs. I didn't believe in extraterrestrials or reincarnation or any of those things. I had a very limited belief system, and it's only been through remote viewing that belief system has expanded, because I've had experiences with interdimensional beings, and I mean, all kinds of things that just kind of blew my God box right open. And
Right.
I've written about some of these experiences, some of the wilder ones, in my blogs. So if anybody wants to explore the blogs, there's one called 18 Years of Excitement. And you can actually go to Google and type in 18 Years of Excitement, Intuitive Specialist, and it'll pull that blog up. But it's some of the wilder remote viewings that have happened in my life, and or that I've experienced, and that really did contribute to a change in my belief system.
Wow, it's very much more expansive than how I was perceiving it to be, and so much more real world applications than I had perceived.
Yeah,
But now,
it really does.
is there anything new coming up? Are you changing anything? Are you expanding in any way?
Yes, gosh, we have grown so fast that my head is spinning from the growth that we've experienced. Up until like July of 2019, I just, it was kind of word of mouth, really. I just taught people would tell other people about my class, and I would teach online. I would teach about a class a month, a 3-day workshop every month, live, like on Zoom. And sometimes I had in-person classes too, up until the pandemic. So I had a mix of both. And sometimes I had both at the same time. I had people sitting in front of me, and then I had this whole setup with people on a big screen that were attending online. And then I kept having this sense that I needed to create a free course. And I had tried hiring different videographers, and it never seemed to work very well. There were always reasons for it, but it never seemed to I never ended up with something that I could put out. And I finally decided, if you want something done, you gotta, if you want something done your way, you gotta do it yourself. And so I finally just did it myself, and I just recorded myself, and got a tripod and put my iPhone up there, and got a microphone, and just taught the class myself. And then when I put it out, I thought, how many people are really going to go for this? I put it out there, and we had something like 4,800 people sign up. And I was like really shocked. I was just, wow, that's pretty amazing. Part of the reason for that was that I had been asked to be part of a documentary that Stephen Greer was getting ready to put out, called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And I had met Stephen, and we'd done this interview together. I think I ended up on the cutting room floor, so I didn't end up in the documentary. But when I got to the place where we were going to do the interview for the documentary, I had announced this thing, and we had about 2,000 people that had signed up. And Stephen was asking his staff why they were all excited. And they said, "Oh, she's got this free remote viewing class that she's putting out tomorrow, or whatever, or 3 days from now." And he said, "Oh, you do?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, I'll put that out to my list." And so he put it out to his list, because at that time I didn't have really much of a list. And so he put it out to his list, and I think he had like 40,000 people on his list. And so boom, another 2,800 people signed up, I think.
Oh my God.
And so all of a sudden we had 4,800 people that signed up. But even statistically, usually only 20% actually follow through on something they signed up for. But we had 80% of those people watch the 4 days.
Wow.
And so that was shocking, and way, way beyond what they say to expect. And then after that, I had offered a 6 course that people could sign up, and I'd never created a video course of my 3-day live workshops before. So I created this 6-week course, and people just started signing up for that. And now we have the master class in this, going all the time, the free class. It was only at that time, it's like, I'm going to put the master class out on this date, and then anybody could watch it. But then once it was over, it was done and you couldn't watch it anymore. Now we have it out just on a regular basis, and people can watch that free master class. And then if they feel like it's really for them, if they want to, they can sign up for a 6-week course or a live workshop. And my goal, because you're asking where we're going and how we're growing, my goal is to eventually have all my classes as 6-week video courses, because so many people now are either homebound or they don't have, they need to be able to watch on their own convenient schedule.
Sure.
Rather than sitting down for 3 days. The 3-day workshops are great, though. It's a fast track. It's a way to get there a lot quicker. But if you don't have time for that, and also a lot of people are telling me, I have ADHD, so I need the video course so I can rewind
and watch it again
and things.
Yeah.
And I empathize, because I also have ADHD. It runs in my family. I don't know if anybody could tell from just watching me talk, but anyway, so it's really been wonderful, because we're expanding. And then I got the 2 books written, and now I'm planning to write a whole series of books, of remote viewing how-to books, and kind of gradually share my story in each one a little more.
Here's one of your books. It's called Monitoring, which can be found on Amazon. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
And then Boundless. Now, those are the 2 that you have out right now, right?
Those are the 2 I have out. Yes.
Okay. I would highly recommend those. I was thinking about, what you were saying about, having to do things in a different way and sort of getting a heads up on that you were going to need to be teaching online and that sort of thing. Well, that's how, when we first connected, that was sort of the context in which we connected, because, I work in television production, and then of course everything was shut down. There was nothing going on. And so a couple friends of mine who are, own a production company here called, and they said, we've got this idea, and, we're going to do this live stream. It's going to be several days, 24 hours a day, and going to offer it globally. People are bored. People don't have anything to do. We want to entertain people. So I said, that just sounds insane. So obviously I'm in, and so we did it, and we did 3 of those. The first one we did was the Conjuring House. The second one was Lizzie Borden, which you worked on as well. And then we did a Halloween special on the Queen Mary. But it was because obviously we had to think of new ways to do things. It would have been nice if we would have all had a heads up that that's what we were going to have to do, but we had to figure it out after it already started. But what it did was, I think it really caused people to get more creative about the things that they were doing. And I have a feeling that even when the pandemic is completely over, that things are not going to go back exactly as they were, certainly in terms of technology, entertainment, classes, education, things like that. I think there will still be a huge digital element, and it caused us to really develop, ways to do that. And then we thought, hey, this is pretty good. I don't have to go all the way to Rhode Island or wherever it is. I can, stick a camera there and I can communicate from right here. So we did it out of necessity. And now I think, we're all going to benefit a little bit from it. Of course,
I think so.
Obviously we paid a heavy, heavy price for a pandemic, but I do think there are some things that have come out of it that we'll find helpful.
I think so too. And when that big ice storm hit in the winter, this just last February or something, there was, a lot of people might have heard about this. There was a huge pileup of 133 vehicles on I-35 in Fort Worth,
Yeah.
Texas. My son was on his way to work, and he came up over the bridge, and a short rain had just fallen. It was just a very brief rain, just enough to put a little bit of water on the roads,
Which
that
makes it very
instantly froze.
slippery. Mm.
Instantly froze, and as they were coming down, they all just started sliding into each other. And he was in the middle of that, and it was freezing cold outside.
My gosh.
He had his dad was a long haul truck driver, still is actually, and his dad had always told him, "Hey, if you're ever in an accident in cold weather, number one, you should always keep bundled up in your car in case there's an accident, because a lot of people freeze to death. They survive the accident, but then they freeze to death because they have the car." He said, but also make sure you get out of the car. Whereas everything you read says stay in the car, keep your seatbelt buckled, and all this. So as he crashed, he leapt out of car just as an 18-wheeler went and obliterated his car. I mean, completely obliterated it. Had he not leapt out of there and leapt over the median. And so, I mean, his instincts and his intuition and his dad's great advice, I mean, it was all like a split second, literally. And it was so, and then when the 18-wheeler hit, the debris that fell over, if he hadn't leapt the way he did, I mean, he leapt head first over and then stayed on the ground, and all that debris fell past him. Or because if he'd been standing up, he would have been decapitated by the debris. But when that all happened, you think about major cities like the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Houston, Austin, and people were filming with icicles hanging from their chandeliers and their toilets, frozen water out of their toilets. And the thing about it was kind of an equalizer in that there were wealthy people all through those cities that were also having to burn their furniture and things. I mean, they couldn't heat their houses either, and all the homes are electric. Well, the thing I wanted to mention about this is that it caused people who really depended on the infrastructure and never thought the infrastructure would let them down to get quite shaken by the fact that the infrastructure didn't help them. I mean, the infrastructure failed them. Mm-hmm. Well, now those same cities are facing another infrastructure failure because of the heat. We're having excessive heat, and everyone's turning on their air conditioners, and the infrastructure is about to fail again. And so there was a man named Mike Reynolds who about 45 years ago, as he was getting out of architectural school, said, "We have a problem. We have tires and pollution and cans and bottles and garbage that's overtaking the planet. But we also have buildings that don't protect their occupants because they can't protect them from extremes of temperature, cold and hot." And so if you live in New York City and the grid goes down and you live in a high rise, you're in trouble if it's really cold out or it's really hot out. And so I live in an earth ship, which is a house made of garbage. And I am
You live in an earth ship right now?
Yes, this house you're looking at right here.
Oh my God, I know those earth ships. Do you see
this ridge right here? See this? My fingers are going everywhere. See this ridge right here where my finger is? That's where the tires go up to. There's a layer of 12 tires that are set like bricks, and they're all filled with earth. And then in front of me, it's all windows. So during the summer, it's mostly overhead. So at night, like right now, we have all the doors open, and the house is quite cool. And then in the mornings, now because it's summertime, we have shades drawn about halfway down the windows. And then when we get up in the morning, the house is really cool. We close the doors and it stays cool all day. And these walls help it to continue to stay cool because we have a big earth berm behind here. And our bedroom, when it was 100 degrees outside on a really hot day, our bedroom, the hottest it got was 76 degrees. And that's with no air conditioning at all. Wow. And then when we had, during that cold spell that caused the infrastructure to collapse in Texas, it got to -5 degrees here. And the coldest it got, with no fire in the stove or anything like that, the coldest it got was 56 degrees inside. Wow. And 56 degrees, I mean, you can put on a sweater. Yeah. You're fine, Or my husband, who's bald, he says, I got to put on a beanie. I'm going to put a beanie on my bald head. But I mean, in other words, we have, no matter what the temperature is outside, and we don't even have a modern earthship. The modern earthships can keep the interior of the earthships at 73 degrees, regardless of the outdoor temperature. Year round, without any forms of air conditioning, heating or cooling. And so, like, I mean, we had a pretty hot day here, but it's been very comfortable. I sit here and I work, and I'm very comfortable in the Earthship. And I'm broadcasting to you right now completely off grid. So when our entire county was without electricity, the whole grid went down in our county twice now. It hasn't affected us because we generate our own electricity through solar panels.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
and I'm not sharing this to brag. What I'm sharing this about is that we have to realize that life is changing, and things that we have depended upon are no longer as trustworthy as we thought. And so what are we going to do? Can we use CRV to anticipate those things? People ask, well, what made you move? We moved here 4.5 years ago. A little over 4 years ago. People say, what made you move there? And what made you move there? Well, we have this skill. We look ahead, we go, okay, infrastructures are collapsing. Maybe we need to shift and make something happen here. And I told my husband, we learned about Earthships passing through Taos, just outside of Taos. They have an Earthship community with 70 homes. And one winter, when the whole infrastructure collapsed and they didn't have any electricity and the gas systems collapsed as well, the people were really cold. They had to shut down all the businesses in Taos, and they had Humvees, military Humvees patrolling the streets. And 30 minutes away in that Earthship community, they were watching the Super Bowl, and they didn't even know anything was wrong. They didn't even know there was a problem. And so, because it didn't affect them. They didn't have heating. They didn't have to worry about electricity and gas. They had their own systems. And I think that we have to, if we're going to save the planet, if we're going to save our children and our grandchildren, and I now have a great grandbaby, then we have to be thinking more independently. We have to start thinking more independently. We can't trust systems to take care of us anymore. And so, I realize it's not a possibility for everyone, but it is something to start thinking about. How can I toughen myself up and live in a little more independent way where I'm not quite so dependent on external systems?
That sounds wonderful. Not to mention the savings from high power bills,
Yeah, we don't have any utility bills.
That's
I think
amazing.
we pay an internet bill every month because we do get internet. But I think we pay for about $150 a year for gas. We have a gas tank, outside that gives us like propane. But we haven't filled it up now for about 1.5 years. Last time we filled it up, I think it was like $200. So that's our only utility, really.
Someone in the chat is asking, how does your internet work? Just as you were began talking about the internet, I might add.
Yeah. So and you know what, we use a thing called Y-Power. The company that we get from is called Y-Power. I think it's called TransUnion or something now, but it was, when we first signed up, it was called Y-Power. And they ping it off a cell tower that we can't even see, that's 4 miles away. And they said we live right on the edge of where we should be able to not get internet. They're like, it's a miracle you're getting internet because you're right on the edge of how far this thing goes, and it only goes 4 miles. And they said 4 miles away, there's a cell tower, and that's where your internet's coming from. And so miraculously, here we are, and we managed to get enough internet. And when we found out about Earthships, we were so fascinated that we got on YouTube and we binge watched everything we could find about Earthships. And then I attended the Earthship Academy at the Earthship Biotecture, which is the company that builds Earthships. And then I said to my husband, we have to live in an Earthship. We have to find a big property with some Earthships, with several Earthships, because we have 9 children. And they're all adults, and most of them are married and have children too. We have 21 grandkids and now a new great-grandbaby. And so the very next day, I found a property with 80 acres and 3 Earthships. And we bought it, and the rest is history.
Wow.
So it's really...
I remember those Earthships. I think the first I knew about them was back in the mid-90s. We did a story about Earthships on Strange Universe. And if I'm not mistaken, the actor Dennis Weaver
that's right,
was involved with Earthships. Right.
Dennis Weaver loved Earthships, and Earthship Biotecture built him a 10,000 square foot mansion that is a complete Earthship. I didn't visit the 10,000 square foot one. He built another one that was 5,000 square feet. And the funny thing is that We were living in Amarillo in a 5,000 square foot home, 7 bedrooms, 3 living rooms, 4 bathrooms on 2 acres of land with a 2,500 square foot shop. It was a beautiful place. We spent a couple of $100,000 remodeling it and thinking we'll live here forever. So we're going to make it beautiful. And it was just gorgeous. And we remodeled it back to the studs. And Jim did 99% of the labor.
Oh, wow.
And I did a lot of the interior design. But anyway, so we had this gorgeous home, and then we discovered earthships. And the whole time we were living in this beautiful home, I had this sense like, you have to get out of this house and you have to live more sustainably. It's just not working. 2 huge air conditioning units, 2 huge heating units, $600 a month in utilities. And it just was like, it wasn't the money. It was just this sense of impending doom. You have to get out of this house. I just kept feeling it. And then, you know, when I said we need a big property with a bunch of earthships, the very next day found this property, it just felt like it was meant to be. You know, it just really.
Well, I would, you know, we're getting so close to the end of the show. I cannot believe that, but time has just flown. But and I don't want to end on a scary note, but have you done sessions and or had some of your students do sessions on climate change?
I've done some work with climate change, and I do anticipate things are going to get more dire. I mean, and you don't have to be a remote viewer. I mean,
no.
all the scientists, it's everywhere. It's scary to watch the Weather Channel because they have all these things on every single day, you know, we're in a bird emergency, you know, or, you know, that, you know, half the country is no water and half the country is way too much water.
Yeah.
And so, so you don't have to be a remote viewer to know, yes, climate change is getting worse. Things are going to be more dire. We're definitely heading into tougher times. If you think we've had tough times up to this point, things are going to get tougher. They really are. And I'd be lying if I said no, if I just wanted to be Pollyanna and paint a rosy picture. That's why I say don't bury your head in the sand, but be proactive. And that's why I'm writing these blogs and things that are all about, you know, how to pick the right place to live and, you know, how to find your ideal location, how to live with uncertainty and still have peace and joy in your life every day, no matter what's happening, you know. And so if you want to learn a lot of skills and you aren't a remote viewer or you don't want to be a remote viewer, that's totally fine. I love you anyway. And you can go and read these blogs. And I think you'll find a lot of the blogs very helpful. And if you are a remote viewer and you're interested in it, there's tons of free things on the website. It's not about money. Jim and I have never been about money. I am at retirement age right now. I should be retiring, but, and we don't need, you know, I mean, we live very simply. We live in a mud hut. We don't have flushing toilets. We have composting toilets, and we live very, very simply. One of my students was like, she was from London. She's like, you choose to live this way? It's like horrified. You choose to live this way, you know, because everyone thinks, oh, she must be so wealthy, you know. And the hilarious thing is any money I make, I invest either back into my students. We have been putting tons more free programs on our website, and I pay a lot of money to have those programs. We just had a new database that we put on the program for our students, and I paid quite a bit of money for that. And, you know, I just invest back into it. It's free for our students. And so it's not about money. Because what good is money going to do you if you're, you know, if we know we're all heading in a certain direction. So to me, it's about, let's raise consciousness and let's see what we could do to turn things around.
Yeah.
You know, let's see what we can do to turn things around. Buy paper that's been recycled, 100% recycled paper. Someone just sent me this Tree Zero, a pack of paper that's called Tree Zero, and you can order from them, and it kills 0 trees because we need the trees. And we need the rest. There's a company called DAI that's out of Alamogordo, New Mexico, and he is creating these little native grass seeds that are in little tiny pellets of everything the seed needs to survive, and they can be dropped from airplanes and things like that, so that when it does rain, when we do get some rain, those seeds will sprout because native grasses and trees help to mitigate global warming. And so there are a lot of things we can do. There are also a lot of companies now out there that are trying to clean the oceans and are doing things to help remove the plastics from the oceans and things. And so for us, it's not about remote viewing. The remote viewing is not a problem. We can find solutions for things. The problem is, how do you get the solution you find into the hands of someone who can do something about it? Who's not going to think you're a nut? And I was joking, hi, could I speak to Bill Gates? Yeah, this is Lori Lambert Williams. I have a solution that I wanted to talk to. It's like, it's going to be kind of nutty, or yes, could I speak to President Biden, please? It's like,
exactly.
How do you get the solutions into the hands of those who could do something about it, into the hands of those who have the power right now to make things different and to change?
Let me push you one bit further, since we're down to the final minute. Will we do that? Do you see us?
I think the jury's still. I don't have an answer for that yet. I haven't viewed that. I think, though, that one thing I have a perfect peace about: the universe loves us. God loves us, and everything that's happening right now is meant to happen, and it's all to enrich us as a species, as spirits, as as beings. We're all learning. We're all here in this school we call Earth, and we're all. There is no death. We're just going to go from one reality into the next one. We're just stepping through the doorway, so we don't have to be afraid of what's coming. We just know that we're right where we're supposed to be. And we're going to learn exactly what we're supposed to learn. And it's all encased in love. Love is the ultimate force. Love is the strongest force. It's stronger than gravity. And it's the most powerful thing.
Note to end on tonight, because we're all out of time once again. But Lori Lambert Williams, thank you so much. Don't forget, go to Lori's site, intuitivespecialists.com. And also, I'm going to put that code for the free class up on my Facebook page, and maybe I'll have Bill put it on the KGRA page so that you can still get to it if you didn't get to write it down. But thanks everyone so much for joining us. Join me next week. It's going to be an interesting show. We're going to be talking all about the Immaculate Conception. Did it really happen? Can it still happen? We'll find out. Join us next week. Thanks everyone. Good night.